Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening up a topic that honestly made me look at my own web browser a little differently this morning.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a paradigm shift.
It really is. I mean, we spend so much time obsessed with UX, right? User experience. We obsess over the color of the buttons, the witty copy, the way a menu slides out. It is all designed for human eyes and human fingers.
And that makes sense. That has been the golden rule of the internet since the mid-90s. If a human can't use it easily, it's broken.
Exactly. But we have this fascinating stack of research from Acalytica today that argues we are currently living through well, they call it a quiet reckoning.
A very quiet reckoning.
Right. And the argument is that most product teams, most developers, and definitely most marketing teams are completely sleeping through it.
Okay.
Because the most important user hitting your website right now might not be human at all.
It sounds almost like a sci-fi premise, you know? Something that quietly became reality while we were all distracted by everything else. The web was indeed built for us biological entities with cultural context, eyeballs, and intuition. But now, here in early 2026, we have these autonomous software agents.
We're talking LLMs, RAG pipelines, procurement bots.
Exactly. And they are trying to navigate a world that simply was not built for them.
And the research suggests they are struggling, like really struggling.
Struggling is putting it mildly. They are crashing constantly. And when they crash, it costs companies money in ways they can't even track.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty specific. We want to find out if your documentation, so your products manual, your API reference, your help center, is invisible to these AI agents.
Right.
And if it is, how do you actually fix it? Because according to this data, agent-friendly documentation isn't just a nice-to-have feature for the tech-savvy anymore.
No, it's an active liability if you don't have it. That is the absolute core of it.
Yeah.
And I want to be really clear about the stakes here before we get into the technical weeds. We aren't talking about SEO.
Right. This isn't about keywords.
No, we aren't talking about ranking on Google so a human clicks a link. We are talking about whether an AI agent acting on behalf of a potential buyer or a developer can actually understand what your product does.
And if it can't?
If it can't, you don't just lose traffic, you lose the sale or you lose the integration, and you never even knew the customer was there. It's invisible churn.
That is the terrifying part, honestly, invisible churn. But before we get into the fix, and we do have a very specific 5-pillar checklist to go through today, let's unpack the problem a bit.
Sure.
Why are agents so bad at reading websites? I mean, these are supercomputers, essentially. I can figure out a messy website. Why can't they?
Well, it comes down to the fundamental difference between reading and parsing. You, as a human, have a superpower called intuition.
I try.
Right? We all do.
Yeah.
If you land on a documentation page and the formatting is a bit broken, or the pricing link is buried in a footer, or the terminology switches from team to organization halfway through, you figure it out.
Right. I fill in the blanks. I use context clues.
You handle ambiguity. Agents do not handle ambiguity well, or rather, you don't really want them to guess. Agents need explicit structure. They need a map.
Okay, that makes sense.
When an agent hits a barrier, say a PDF, locked behind a login screen, or a page that is just a soup of JavaScript tags, it doesn't get frustrated and email customer support to ask for clarification.
It just fails.
It fails in one of two ways. The first is silent failure. It just stops. It assumes the information doesn't exist. It reports back to the user, hey, I couldn't find that information.
Which is bad, but maybe not catastrophic.
But the second way is much worse. It hallucinates.
We hear that word a lot. What does hallucination actually look like in this specific context?
It means the agent finds some text, can't quite parse the details because the structure is messy, and then uses its predictive model to fill in the rest.
Based on what other companies do.
Exactly, based on its training data.
So it tells the user, yes, this product has single sign-on when it actually doesn't, just because similar products do.
Precisely. Or it invents a code snippet that doesn't actually work, and now you have a user who thinks your product is broken, or worse, that you're a liar.
That is wild. The source material actually lays out 3 real-world scenarios where this is costing companies actual money right now. I want to walk through these because they make this abstract concept really concrete.
Let's do it.
The first one is what they call the assistant recommendation.
This is probably the most common one right now. Imagine a potential customer, let's call him Dave, asks his AI assistant, does this sauce tool support webhook retries?
It's a very specific binary technical question.
Right. The AI goes out, scans your docs.
But let's say my docs are a bit unstructured. Maybe I mentioned retries in a random blog post from 3 years ago, but not in the core API reference.
The AI can't verify it with certainty. It looks for a ground truth in the documentation hierarchy and doesn't find it. So to be safe, it assumes the answer is no.
Wow.
Or it simply declines to recommend your product because it can't confirm the feature.
Meanwhile, my competitor, who have a clean, structured section explicitly titled Retry Logic, gets the recommendation.
Exactly. Dave buys the competitor's tool, you lost the deal, and you're sitting there looking at your dashboard wondering why your leads are down.
And you'll never know it was because a bot couldn't read a blog post.
Never.
Okay, scenario 2 is the developer integration. I have actually been this developer. You're trying to build something fast, you're tired, and you lean on AI.
Right. You're using an AI coding assistant. You highlight a block of code and say, write me a script to authenticate with this API.
The agent tries to read your API reference to figure out how to do that. But let's say your auth instructions are written in a conversational paragraph.
Or worse, they are buried inside a dynamic single-page application, a SPA.
The classic loading screen.
Yes. We'll get to why that's a problem in a minute, but effectively the agent can't see the instructions.
To the agent, that page is literally blank.
Correct. So it hallucinates an authentication flow. It makes up an endpoint that looks plausible but just doesn't exist.
And then I run the code, it breaks, and I get a 404 error. And here is the kicker. Who do you blame? Do you blame the AI?
No, usually I'd think, man, this API is trash. The documentation is wrong.
Exactly. It's a massive reputation hit. You look incompetent because the agent couldn't read your instructions. It is an active liability.
It really is.
The third scenario is the big one for the business side, the enterprise buyer. This is all about procurement.
Procurement is changing so fast right now. We are seeing large companies use AI tools to compare vendors at massive scale.
They feed in a list of requirements, right?
Yeah. SOC2 compliance, specific integrations, user roles, and they tell the AI, scan these 5 vendors and tell me who matches.
And if my feature list is locked up in a shiny marketing graphic, those really nice pricing tables that are actually just JPEGs.
To the AI, that is a black hole. It sees no text, it just sees an image tag. So it reports back to the buyer, this vendor lacks SOC2 compliance.
Even if you have the feature and you paid for the audit.
You are invisible. You are disqualified before a human ever even looks at your proposal.
That is just money evaporating into thin air. Okay, I think we've established that the house is on fire here. Let's talk about how to put it out.
Good idea.
The Acalytica report outlines 5 pillars of agent-friendly documentation. Let's break these down, starting with what looks like the most technical hurdle. Pillar 1, static, crawlable content.
This is the foundation. If you don't get this right, the other 4 pillars literally do not matter. The enemy here is client-side rendering.
Which is basically how modern web development works, isn't it? React, Vue, Angular. We love building these dynamic apps where the browser builds the page on the fly.
We do. And for a human user with a modern browser, that's totally fine. It feels snappy. But for a crawler, and remember, many RAG systems act like very simple crawlers. They don't always run a full browser simulation.
They just grab the initial HTML code from the server, right?
Right. So if you view the source code of a React app, sometimes all you see is a single line of code, a div tag and a script tag.
The empty shell problem.
Exactly. The content doesn't exist until the JavaScript runs. But the agent isn't running the JavaScript because that's expensive and slow. It just sees the empty shell and thinks your page is blank.
So what's the fix here? Do we have to go back to static HTML from the 90s?
Conceptually, yes. But the modern tools have caught up. You need server-side rendering or static site generation.
Things like Next.js, Astro, Docusaurus.
Right. Mitlify is another one. They are built for this. They render the content on the server and send the full text to the browser. So when the agent knocks on the door, the text is already there waiting for them.
It's basically hospitality for robots.
That's a great way to put it.
There's a really simple test for this in the notes, and I love it because anyone listening can do it right now. The curl test.
Yes, the curl test. This is the ultimate litmus test. Open your terminal or command prompt, type curl, then your documentation URL, and hit enter.
And just look at what comes back.
If you see your actual content, your headlines, your paragraphs, your code snippets, you're good. If you see a bunch of minified JavaScript and empty div tags, you are invisible.
I feel like a lot of listeners are going to try that today and be very disappointed.
It's a common wake-up call, but it is the necessary first step.
Okay, moving on to Pillar 2, structure and semantics. The source explicitly says, well-written prose is not enough. This is interesting because we usually tell people to write better, clearer copy.
Clear copy helps humans, but this pillar is about moving from can the agent see it to can the agent understand the hierarchy. We need structured data.
We're talking about schema.org here.
Yes, JSON LD specifically. Think of it as metadata tags for your content. You need to explicitly declare to the parser this block of text isn't just a story, it is a product. This is an API endpoint. This is a price.
So you're labeling the data types so the AI doesn't have to guess.
Exactly. And this goes down to the basic HTML tags, too. I see so many sites that are just a sea of div tags.
The dreaded div soup.
It's a plague. Please, stop using div for everything. Use article section H1 code.
Does that actually make a measurable difference to an LLM?
A huge difference. It helps with chunking. When a RAG system processes your docs, it chops them into little pieces to store in a database.
Oh, I see.
If you use semantic tags like article, you are telling the robot where the natural boundaries are. Cut here, not here.
So it prevents the system from chopping a sentence in half or separating a code example from the explanation that actually goes with it.
Precisely. If you use generic tags, the robot cuts blindly. Then, when it tries to retrieve that info later, it retrieves absolute nonsense. Semantic HTML is basically providing the scissors and the dotted lines.
That makes total sense. Let's move to pillar 3. This one is my favorite because it feels like a secret code for the future. The lms.txt file.
This is gaining traction very fast. You know robots.txt.
Yeah, that's the file that tells Google where not to go. Stay out of the admin panel. Don't index this folder.
Right. Well, lms.txt is the exact opposite. It's a concierge service for AI. You place it at yourdomain.com/lms.txt.
And what goes in it?
It's just a plain text markdown file that summarizes your site's most important content.
So instead of making the AI crawl every single page and guess what's important, you just hand it a list.
Exactly. You put in a brief description of what your product is. You list key URLs with plain language labels. Here's the pricing. Here is the API reference. And very importantly, you list authentication requirements.
Why is authentication specifically so important to put in this file?
Because figuring out auth is one of the hardest things for an agent to do by scraping. It's often scattered across multiple pages.
Ah, right.
If you just tell it we use bearer token auth, and here is the header format, right at the front door, you save the agent a massive amount of processing time.
It's like walking into a massive library and having the librarian hand you a cheat sheet that says, here are the 5 books you actually need, and they are on shelf B.
It's a huge optimization, and the best part is you can write an LLS.txt file in about 20 minutes. You don't need a dev team to deploy a massive update. It's just a text file.
Low effort, high impact. We love those.
Mm.
Okay, pillars 4 and 5 focus on clarity and details. Pillar 4 is terminology and the synonym trap. This is where my human intuition gets me in trouble again.
It really is. Humans are great at context. If I call something a workspace on the pricing page, but then I call it an organization in the settings menu and maybe a team in the API docs, you figure it out.
Yeah, I just click around until it makes sense. I assume they're synonyms.
An agent does not make that assumption. It treats those as 3 completely different entities. It creates a knowledge graph where workspace and organization are entirely separate nodes.
Oh, wow. So the map is fundamentally broken inside the AI's brain.
Completely. When a user asks, how do I add a user to my organization, the agent might hallucinate a complex process involving linking a team to a workspace, which doesn't exist.
He's trying to bridge gaps that shouldn't even be there.
Right, so we need a controlled vocabulary.
Strict consistency.
Exactly. Pick one word and stick to it, create a glossary, and please avoid cute marketing names unless you map them very clearly.
Oh, you mean like calling the enterprise tier the Galactic Overlord plan?
Exactly that. If you call your pricing tiers Starship, Rocket, and Bicycle, you need to explicitly state the Starship tier corresponds to enterprise futures.
Because the AI doesn't know that Starship implies enterprise.
Right. It's going to have a very hard time answering the question, which plan has SSO?
It seems obvious when you say it, but marketing teams love their creative names. It adds flavor to the brand.
Flavor is fine for humans. For agents, flavor is just noise. Clarity beats creativity every time in documentation.
Finally, Pillar 5, metadata and API specifics.
This is the nuts and bolts. We need meta tags with accurate descriptions. And specifically for XML sitemaps, we need the last mod date.
Why does the last modified date matter so much to a bot?
Freshness. Agents prioritize recent information. If you don't provide a date, the agent has no idea if this documentation is from 2016 or last week.
And in the software world, 5-year-old docs are basically worse than no docs.
They're dangerous. They have deprecated endpoints. So if you want the agent to trust your answer, you need to prove it's current.
And what about APIs? The source mentions something called an open API spec.
This is the gold standard for APIs. You
Yeah.
cannot just describe your API in paragraphs. You need a machine-readable specification, usually OpenAPI 3.0.
It defines every endpoint, every parameter, right?
Yes, every error code, all in a structured format. For the agent, the OpenAPI spec is the documentation. It can ingest that file and know exactly how to construct a valid API call without guessing.
It turns the API from a mystery into a known quantity. The source also mentions something called a bundle, an lms-full.txt. This sounds like the deluxe version of the text file we talked about earlier.
It is. This is for the advanced class. Our ag systems have a limited context window. They can only read so much at once. But those windows are getting bigger. A bundle is a single file that contains your entire documentation in one text stream.
The whole manual in one file.
Yes. It allows a sophisticated model to ingest your entire product surface in one gulp, rather than having to scrape page by page. It's like downloading the entire knowledge base into the agent's brain instantly.
That sounds incredibly powerful for getting accurate answers. You're removing all friction.
Exactly. It's the ultimate agent-friendly move.
So we have these 5 pillars: crawlability, structure, lms.txt, consistent terminology, and metadata. But the article zooms out at the end. It talks about a deeper shift in philosophy.
This is the real takeaway of the deep dive. It is very tempting to look at this checklist, sitemaps, schema tags, curl tests, and say, okay, send this ticket to the DevRel team. It's an SEO task.
Just another box to tick to make the engineers happy?
But it's not. It's a fundamental shift in the definition of readability. There was a quote in the source that really stuck with me.
What was it?
Writing documentation that only humans can read is like publishing a product catalog that can only be seen under a specific kind of light.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
You're effectively hiding your product from anyone without that light.
And you are hiding it from the very systems that are increasingly mediating the relationship between you and your customer.
The new reader.
Right, the agent. It is tireless, it is literal, and it operates at massive scale. If you are legible to that reader, you have a massive competitive advantage.
It's not necessarily because your product is better, but because it's clearer.
Legibility is the new leverage. If an agent can easily find, understand, and verify your features, you win the recommendation. You win the integration. You win the procurement audit.
I love that concept. Legibility as leverage. It changes the entire conversation from tech debt to revenue strategy.
Absolutely.
Okay, we always like to leave you with something you could do right now. We touched on the curl test. Let's recap the action plan so nobody leaves here confused.
Step 1, the crawlability check. Run curl on your top 10 doc pages. If they come back empty, call your engineering team immediately. You have a massive problem.
Step 2.
The entry point. Add an LLMs.txt file to your root domain. It takes an afternoon to write. It's the highest ROI thing you can do this week.
Step 3.
Audit your terms. Pick 3 core concepts in your product and check if you are using different words for them across your site. If you are, fix it. Build a glossary.
And finally, step 4.
The API check. Ensure you have a public, versioned, open API spec. If your API docs are just a PDF or a blog post, you are making it incredibly hard for developers to use your tool with AI assistance.
It's a very clear list, and honestly, looking at it, it feels less like preparing for the far-off future and more like fixing the present.
That is the reality. These agents are already on your site. They are crawling you right now. The only question is, are they seeing a blank page? Or are they seeing your product?
And that actually brings up one final thought to mull over. Building on that, we've been talking entirely about public agents, right?
Yeah.
ChatGPT, Claude, public procurement bots, scanning your external docs.
Right.
But every company right now is also building internal AI tools. Internal enterprise search, internal developer assistance.
Absolutely.
So if public agents can't read your public documentation because of div soup and client-side rendering, what makes you think your own internal AI tools can read your internal company wikis?
That is a scary thought. The same exact rules apply behind the firewall.
Exactly. If your internal architecture documents or HR policies are built on these same invisible frameworks, your own expensive internal AI deployment is probably hallucinating too.
It's a house of cards.
Legibility isn't just leverage for sales, it's leverage for your own team's efficiency. Think about that the next time you boot up an internal wiki. I hope everyone listening is already opening their terminal to run that curl test.
Run the test. You might be very surprised.
Thanks for jumping into this deep dive with us. We'll see you on the next one.